Alright, let's work on some story problems that deal with proportions and cross products. So here's an example. Marta is making a scale drawing of her room. Her rectangular room is 15 feet wide and 10 feet long. On the scale drawing, the width of her room is 6 inches. What is the length of her room? So the hint is to set up a proportion and solve it using cross products. So first we have to come up with what our ratio is going to look like. Okay, so when you're working with scale, typically your ratio looks like the length of the scale, okay, over the actual object. Okay, so what we want to do here is notice the length of our scale to the actual object. We want to compare those. Okay, so for length and for width. So let's take a look at the length. The length of the scaled object, the scale, we don't know. That's our question mark. So we're going to call that an X, and it's going to go on top. We're going to set these all up the same. Okay, the length of the actual object, or actual bedroom, is 10 feet. Okay, let's do the width also. Okay, so on top, the scale, the width of the scale drawing is 6 inches. And on the bottom, we have the actual length of the actual object, the length of the actual object, or width, sorry, I should be doing width, sorry, saying that wrong. The width of the actual object is 15 feet. Alright, so what we want to do here is set up a proportion. We now have two ratios. Those two ratios, if the drawing was done correctly, should be equivalent. Okay, the scale to the actual should say the same whether you're talking about height, width, length, no matter what. So we set up our proportion. X over 10 should equal 6 over 15. Now one thing that's very important, make sure your scale are both on the top and your actual are both on the bottom, or it's going to mess your answer up. We want to solve this for x, which we do by cross multiplying. Leave the equal sign in the middle. So we get 15 times x on one side, 10 times 6 on the other. We get 15x equals 60. We want to solve that. Opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we divide both sides by 60, and we get 4. So the answer to this problem is 4. The scale drawing, the length will be 4 inches. Because notice the scale drawing was in inches, the other was in feet. Let's try one more example. This one's going to be a little bit different. Alright, so here's another example that is similar to the last one we did. This one's a special effects team. They're making a model tower. The height of the model is 12 meters. The width of the model is 7 meters. So those are all the model. If the height of the actual, there's our actual, is 542 meters, what is the actual width of the tower? Okay, so remember, we make this our scale or our model to actual. Okay, if you want to write it as model to actual, you can, since that's the terminology they used in this question. So we're going to set up our ratios. So what two dimensions did we have? We had height and we had width. So we're going to set up those two ratios, putting the height of the model on the top, the actual on the bottom, and for the width, we put the width of the model on the top and the actual on the bottom. So what's the height of the model? That's our top number. The height of the model, it says, is 12 meters. So we put 12 meters on the top. What's the actual? That's going to go on the bottom. What's the actual height? It says if the height of the actual tower is 542. So the actual height is 542. Now let's set up our ratio for width. Okay, the height of the model was 12. The width was 7. So the width, the top is going to be 7. That's the width of our model. The actual width is going to go on the bottom, but that's the part we don't know. It says what is the actual width. So that's going to be our x, our thing we don't know. To solve this, we set those two equal to one another and solve. So 12 over 542 should be equal to 7 over x. We solve that. Remember, we use cross multiplication. Leave the equal sign in the middle, put your 2 multiplication on each side. So we'd have 12 times x on one side and 7 times 542 on the other side. Let's go ahead and simplify that. What's 7 times 542? Is 3,794 equals 12x. And we have 12 times x, so we're the opposite of multiplying by 12, and we divide both sides by 12. And we get x equals 316.16. It's said to round to the nearest meter, so we're going to round that off. The 1 would not make us round up, it would leave us, and we would stay at 316 meters.